Hello everybody and welcome and happy Friday. This is the first video in our Friday Ask a Lawyer series with me, Gina DePrima, your personal family lawyer from DePrima Law. This is a new series we're going to be doing, so please send me your questions, your concerns. You can do that by email, text, direct message, anyway, really just let me know what's on your mind and I'll address it on one of our Ask a Lawyer series sessions that we'll be posting every Friday. Before I get into what we're going to talk about today, which is power of attorney and healthcare directives and why they're so important, I do want to remind you and give a little plug for the contest that we're running. It's the 2022 Good Neighbor Award. I want to hear your stories. I want to know how have you helped somebody? How did you help somebody in 2022, or how did somebody help you? Let me know. Again, you can direct message me, email me, text me, whatever works for you. Let me know. On the 24th of January, I'm going to be picking a winner. And the grand prize is a life and legacy planning session. So, no, it's not a session. It's more than a session. What am I saying? The grand prize is an actual life and legacy plan, a package. So it's more than just the planning session. It's the actual whole deal. So one for you and one for you to give away in honor of a good neighbor, or just to be that good neighbor yourself. So please keep those stories coming. I'll be picking that winner, like I said, on the 24th. Okay. I don't want this to be too long, so I'm going to jump right into it. We're talking today about powers of attorney and healthcare directives and why they're so important. First, I want to say that I recommend that everybody have these basic documents in place as soon as they turn 18. So for all of you parents out there that have young kids, maybe they're turning 18. I know that my daughter's almost 18. She's going to be signing her own power of attorney and her healthcare directives probably on her 18th birthday, because that's how neurotic I am. But she will be doing it. And it's very important. And the long and short of it is, if you do not have these documents in place, then you have just opened yourself up and completely exposed yourself to a whole bunch of risk. Because if something should happen to you, let's just take the most obvious example of a tragedy, that being a car accident. If something should happen to you and you become incapacitated and you find yourself in the hospital, there's not going to be anybody there if you don't have a healthcare proxy in place or any healthcare directives. There's not going to be anybody there to communicate with your medical staff and to tell your doctors what kind of treatment you want, what kind of decisions should be made. And really, that's going to tie your doctor's hands, and they're not going to be able to offer you the best care that they may be able to do because you don't have that in place. There'll be nobody to make those decisions for you. And a lot of people have this misunderstanding, young people that is, thinking, well, can't my parents just step in? I had a conversation with my cousin this week who's young, older than 18, but young. And, that's exactly what he was thinking. Well, my parents would just step in, wouldn't they? No, they can't. As soon as you turn 18 years old, and this might be a surprise, but as soon as a child turns 18 years old, the parents can no longer just step in. They're adults now. So a parent cannot step in and make those very important medical decisions for them. A parent cannot just step in and take over their banking and their bank accounts and pay their rent and pay their car payment, pay their tuition, etc. A parent cannot just step in and do that. Let me give you an example. We'll call him Alex. He was a sophomore in high school, or not in high school, sorry, sophomore in college, and he was doing great student, very athletic, very involved, really just on the right track in life, and tragedy struck, and it was a car accident. It was a car accident. It left him in a coma. He was in a coma for 3 months. Not only did his parents have to deal with that absolute, tragic news and having to scramble and what do they do and how do they help their son, and then they had to go to the state that he was in because he was out of state in college. When they got there, their hands were tied. There's nothing that they could do. Nothing they could do. They couldn't speak for him on his behalf to the doctors. Like I said, they couldn't access his bank accounts. They couldn't do anything. All they could do was go into court and ask the court to appoint them as Alex's guardians. So his own parents had to go into court, a court process, and ask to be appointed as Alex's guardians. And that didn't happen overnight. That's a process. It takes time. It takes money. And yes, they were then appointed by the court as his guardians. But guess what? The court also appointed somebody else, an independent attorney, to be the guardian of Alex's property. to handle all of his financial affairs, to pay his bills, to do all of those things for him. The court did not appoint his parents to do this. They appointed a private paid attorney. Now, I don't know the details of what this attorney was charging, but I don't think I'd be too far off to suggest to you that it was probably somewhere in the neighborhood of at least $250 an hour, upwards to $425 an hour, and probably billing at, every 5 or 6 minutes. So as you can imagine, that is very, very expensive. And unfortunately, when Alex came to 3 months or so later out of the coma, he had to realize, how much his life had changed. There was this new person in place who spent a lot of the money that he had. Of course, he was a college kid. He didn't have a lot, we'll say, to begin with, but it was even less there by the time he came to. His life was kind of in shambles financially. Everything was sort of messed up. And his parents had to just sort of take over, not knowing what his wishes were and not knowing really everything that was going to be required of them, because Alex didn't put these very, very simple documents in place when he had a chance to put them in place. And nobody told him that he needed to, because again, most people don't think like this. A lot of people have this idea that, well, I'm young, I'll live forever. Maybe you will. I don't know, maybe you'll crack the code and live forever. I don't know. But what about the possibility of an accident, right? What about the possibility of ending up in a coma? What about that? We don't think about that, and that can happen to anybody at any point in time. And it's not hard to put these documents in place to shore this up, to make sure that whoever is going to be into your bank accounts and whoever is going to be paying your bills and whoever is going to be talking to the doctors on your behalf, to make sure that that person or people are the people that you want doing it. That's the most important thing. You, I would think, want to have that control and that authority to pick and decide who's going to take care of that stuff for you, rather than letting a stranger in a black robe who doesn't know you, doesn't know your family, doesn't know your financial circumstances, make that decision for you. And worse, put somebody, a professional, in place that's going to charge you a boatload of money. There's a lot, go ahead and Google it. There's a lot of stories out there and a lot of problems out there. And I want you to Google it. Google it and look it up, some of the things that can happen under conservatorship or a guardianship when people do not have these documents in place. Britney Spears is the most popular story. She really brought this issue to light, but it's nothing to laugh about. It's certainly not a joke. If it can happen to Britney Spears, it can happen to anybody, really. Let me tell you another story about a woman, we'll call her Nancy. She was in her 40s. She was perfectly fine, absolutely healthy, running her own business. Life was going very well for her. But again, accidents happen. Tragedy strikes, and she was in a car accident. And as a result of that car accident, she was in a coma. Well, her husband, John, assumed, as I think many people do, that he could just step in, that he could act for her, that he could talk to the doctors for her, but he couldn't. He couldn't do that any more than Alex's parents could do that. He couldn't do that because she did not have a healthcare proxy in place. She did not have any healthcare directives in place, so he could not do that for her. He could not step in and access her bank accounts. He could not step in and help run her business and do whatever needed to be done that she was doing to make sure that that business was going to survive. He couldn't do that because, again, she did not have a power of attorney in place. She did not have any healthcare directives in place. So what did her husband have to do? The same thing as Alex's parents. He had to go to court. So just think about that for a minute. Do you even want your loved ones, the people who are now, probably very emotional, probably very hurt, very shocked, very scared because they're seeing you in a coma in a hospital room, right? Do you want them on top of that having to go through a court process to convince a stranger in a black robe that they are fit and that they should be granted the right and authority to act for you, that they should be appointed as your guardian? Do you even want them to have to go through that? Again, it's a lengthy process. At least it can be a lengthy process. It doesn't happen overnight. There's a cost to it, of course. You're dealing with the court. And you're dealing with lawyers. You have to go into court. You have to fill out paperwork. Do you want them to have to deal with all of that on top of the shock and the pain and whatever they may be going through because you are in a hospital and nobody knows what's going to happen to you, right? I would think the answer is probably no. It's just that most of us don't think about these things in advance. So where was I? That's what John had to do. You know, he had to ask the court to appoint him, and the court did the same thing. They only appointed him as guardian of her person. He was able to make medical decisions for her, or to assist in that regard, but his hands were tied with regard to her business. And unfortunately, when she woke up from her coma, her life was in shambles. Her business was almost, run into the ground. I mean, I don't even know to this day. I'm not sure what happened, if she was able to salvage it or not, but life changed dramatically because she did not have the people in place to help her when and if this emergency, tragic situation occurred. I see on the 33 driving into downtown, there's a billboard now, maybe you would have seen it, and it says, "Ghosts don't plan." And really, think about it. It doesn't get any more real than that. Ghosts don't plan. Okay, so if you want to have control over your life, if you want to have the ability to decide who's going to make decisions for you, and knowing that it's the decisions that you want, that they're managing your life and your affairs and doing things in the way that you would want done by your choice, and allow them to stay out of court. And if it's important to you that these things are handled privately, then please take the time to consider, at a minimum, putting in place a healthcare directive and a power of attorney, at a minimum, because you never know. I mean, this Alex could be you, could be your kid, Nancy could be you, could be your friend. I mean, spread the word. Let everybody know why this is important, okay? It's not something to laugh about. And like I said, Google it up yourself, please. I would love for you to do that. I just saw a show even the other day on this. I think it was on Netflix or something, but the gist of it was basically the horrors of conservatorship. So look it up yourself, share your story. I'd love to hear it. Post it in the comments if you have one to share in this regard, and think about it, please. If you do not have a healthcare proxy or healthcare directives in place, if you don't have your own power of attorney in place, if your kids are over 18 and they're off at college, even if they're not off at college, but whatever, they're over 18, they don't have it in place, please contact me. Let's talk about this, okay? Because I don't want to see this happen to you or anyone you love, and I'm pretty sure that you wouldn't want your loved ones having to go to court either if this were to happen, okay? So these documents are not complicated to put together. It's not even expensive to put together. They're fully worth it. Please get in touch with me if this resonates with you. And please share this message. Thanks so much, and keep your questions coming, your thoughts, your concerns. I'll be back on next Friday to answer them. And also those stories about being a good neighbor. I really want to give this award away. Please help me do that. I'll be picking it on January 24th. Be the winner of our first ever Golden Neighbor, Good Neighbor Award, where you can then gift away a life and legacy plan and also take care of that for yourself. Thanks so much. Until next Friday. Have a great one.